Hello, everyone. I'm Dieter from CryptoKitties. Technically, the company is called Dapper Labs, but everyone knows CryptoKitties, so that's just what I say. I want everyone to take a look at this bad boy up here. He went on sale yesterday for a charity auction, and we actually released this cat as a CryptoKitty. It's a true CryptoKitty, and anyone who doesn't know what CryptoKitties is might actually just not be in the right room. But he went on sale yesterday, and he was also in a custom-made hardware wallet that had a picture of him on the outside that was on display at the Christie's auction house. So one of the finales at Ethereal that just wrapped up yesterday was the auction of this cat. And it went for $140,000. I don't know how many of you know artists that have sold artwork for that much, but I sit next to one of them, which is kind of cool. But of course, what's cool is not just the art, which is absolutely beautiful, but what is cool is that we are one of the first wide stream, apps. I was going to say instances of true ownership of art on the blockchain, but I think we're one of the few projects that actually has two really important things, a product and users. And so I wanted to share a little bit about what was surprising to us beyond the fact that we were this successful. So let me talk about, I didn't prepare anything specifically, so if anyone wants to jump in with questions, that would actually be helpful. But the one thing I want to talk about that probably everyone here knows, but I'm often surprised at how few people do know this, how weak the Ethereum network is in terms of computation. Before we launched CryptoKitties, we were reading all of these ICO white papers about how they're going to do insurance on the blockchain and how they're going to do curation markets and completely replace banking and all of these crazy ideas. And we're like, amazing, we can do this simple cat game and it'll be awesome. And we blew up Ethereum with fewer than 50,000 users, which on the scale of consumer applications is laughably small. And after the fact, I did the computation and I realized that the entire Ethereum network's ability to process code is actually about 30% slower than an Apple IIe, which is a computer that was released in 1983. And fun fact, the Apple IIe was never designed to be shared by tens of thousands of people working simultaneously on it. So obviously we have a really long way to go in terms of scaling. The other thing that I think is really, really useful here, and I know that Zargam has encouraged me to talk about this one, so I will. Before we launched, there were many, many things we didn't know. There is no playbook for releasing a digital cat game on the blockchain. At least there wasn't. Maybe there will be. But we had no idea what to set certain parameters to be. So when you breed two cats together, we're combining their genetics to make the genetics of a new cat. And one of the things that can happen is that two genes can combine and ascend or mutate into another gene. And what probability should that be? Well, it kind of depends on how many users you have. If you have tons of users, you want to actually have that be a relatively small probability to keep the rarity high. If you don't have a ton of users, then you want that to be relatively frequent so that you don't create a bunch of art that no one ever gets to see. So we had no idea what to set that number at. We set it to about 25%. We also didn't know how long it should take for cats to be born. If you breed two cats together, when does the baby come out? The original idea was a day. Then we decided it should be a minute. Then we decided it should be a sliding scale from 1 minute up to a week. And that's what we shipped. And I'll tell you right now, if I could reach into that smart contract and change those numbers to be a little bit longer and create a little bit more anticipation for our users, I think I would. But I can't. And so that brings me to the idea that I came up with after we launched. And it's an idea I encourage all of you to consider, and it's certainly something that we'll be using on any future smart contracts we ship. And it's this idea of ratcheting maturity in your smart contracts. So when you release a smart contract, you can leave hooks in it to change certain aspects of it. But of course, part of the value of blockchain is that your users know that you have limits on how much you can mess with the system. And there was, in fact, surprising to me, we put a pause button, so we can pause the smart contract if there's any sort of major bug in it. Maybe somebody's minting infinite cats or starting to somehow funneling cats out of other people's wallets. We have a pause button so that all activity of our smart contract will halt. And there was a Twitter exchange between someone who I don't actually know, I'd never seen them before, and Vitalik, and the person, the non-Vitalik, was complaining that we had this pause button because that's not decentralized. And his response was, well, that's just prudent engineering. But I'll tell you what, we've gone for months now, we don't have any major problems in our core smart contract, and we can destroy the private key that allows us to call that pause function, but we can't prove it. And I would love the ability to go in and turn off the pause functionality, because I think that's a promise that at least some of our users would care about. When we go back and I talk about things like the breeding probabilities or the breeding times, that's again something that I wish we could have tweaked in those first few weeks after we launched. And so the idea I have now is this idea of ratcheting maturity, where you start out and you say, okay, look, everyone, here are a bunch of variables in our smart contract, and we can change them. But there's one particular variable that's magic, and it's the maturity level, and it starts at 0, and we have a function that we can call, and only we can call it, and it can increment that number by 1. But it can never go down. That number, once it's moved up, it can't go down. And at every level, we remove control from ourselves. And so on launch with CryptoKitties, what we would almost certainly do is say, okay, look, we have full ability to change the probabilities of the breeding algorithm. We have full abilities to change the breeding times. We have full ability to pause the smart contract. But after the first 2 weeks, we would go from 0 to 1. And then we would lock in the genetic algorithm, but we might still leave ourselves the ability to tweak the breeding times, but only within a certain range, maybe only by a factor of 2 after that point. And anyone who doesn't like the fact that we have that ability, they can wait, because they can, if they're savvy enough or they know someone who's savvy enough, they can validate that once we ratchet up to level 2, that we won't be able to manipulate those breeding times, and then they'll be comfortable being involved. And what I would love is it to be the case that when you ratchet up to the highest level, which maybe in this case would be 4, that suddenly that master key becomes worthless. It has no special ability. And we have no power over our smart contract that no one else has. And it might take a full year for us to get to that point and say, okay, yeah, we're comfortable that we don't even need the pause button anymore. But it would be within our power to decide when to take that step, but it would not be within our power to undo that. And so our users we get the benefit of the ability to tweak things with real data from real users, but our users that want to see that long-term, we can nerf your cats, will get that promise at some point in time. And so there would be that nice tension. Yeah, and that's all I really that I really had prepared. I can talk about a million other topics, though. Anything? Would you have a question?
I have 2 specific questions. First of all, what do you describe true digital ownership of this scarcity that you create? You created digital scarcity, and now you're defining digital ownership. What is it exactly?
So it is ownership of a token, a non-fungible token, the same way that you own a fungible ERC20 token or an Ether token. So when you own a cat, there is a data structure in our smart contract that represents that cat. It has the genetics of that cat. It has some metadata about that cat, who its parents were when it was born, how many times it's bred, and that data record is provably associated with a single Ethereum address, and you can. Some people can. I don't know if you're a Solidity programmer, but a Solidity programmer can go and look at our source code and can verify that only the person with that address has the ability to transfer that cat, to sell that cat, and to breed that cat or give authorization for that cat to be bred. And that's what we mean by true ownership. We cannot steal cat from people. We cannot change people's cats. Any cat, once it's minted, can't be changed by anybody. And we can't prevent you from selling it or breeding it in any way you want. So the art is actually a really interesting problem. So we do not store the art in a decentralized way. And that's, well, frankly, because we were in a rush and IPFS is a little not there yet, but we do have a mechanism for storing an IPFS hash in the smart contract, and we do intend to release the cat's metadata, so not just the art, but the bio, the badges, the names of the traits, and all of that stuff in IPFS, where we have an engineer working on that now, and then we can store the hash in the smart contract. The reason we didn't do that for launch mostly was because of time, and also because IPFS seemed a little bit immature to us. But we are continuing to work on that. From a legal standpoint, we hold the copyright to all the art. And the reason we do that is because if we just put the art into the public domain, then anybody else could create a cat game using our art and compete against us, and we didn't want to have that. As we speak, we are working with the legal team to create a license similar to the GPL. So I know lots of people know about open source, but I don't know how many people know that the reason open source works is because they do not give up the copyright. It's because they maintain the copyright and then create this license that says, hey, we maintain the copyright of the code we wrote, but you can use it if you abide by these rules. And that's what we want to do with the art for CryptoKitties. We want to create a license that not only we can use, but that other projects like this can use that say, we own the copyright of the art, but we will give you an unlimited license to use that art if you own this token. And in particular, we will give a temporary license to service providers to do things like print the art on the t-shirt or a mug and make money on that so long as they validate cryptographically that the person that they are selling that item to owns the art. Because right now it would be, even if we gave the right to the art to the user, it would still be illegal for a t-shirt provider unless they formed a license agreement with the user to print the art. And so this is great because it means that that the users can do whatever they want with the art, but we don't have to worry about somebody competing with us using our own assets. Yeah.
So you said the art is cannot be forked, but can the smart contract itself be forked? Like the genes, for example, the storage.
Yeah, I mean, it would be unbelievably expensive because we have somewhere around 750,000 cats at this point in time. And so to create a new smart contract in Ethereum that had all of that same data in it is 100% possible, and you could copy that data. You could copy that data to a different blockchain, but with all existing blockchains, that much data storage, doing it all at once would be incredibly expensive. But it's public data on the blockchain. I mean, like, if you mean forked is you can copy state from one place to another, then yes, 100%.
Okay, another question. So I'm very excited about this whole digital collectible story.
Yeah, so are we.
Do you guys have like any plan for the future beyond cats?
Oh yes. So we have I guess three major initiatives that I can talk about here today. So the first one is that we would like, so for those of you not well into CryptoKitties territory, what we have made a commitment to our community. So we are continually releasing new traits, new art, new genetics for the cats. But we have made a commitment that will only happen for 1 year. And at the end of that year, no new traits will come out, but everyone can still breed all of the existing traits. And so our internal desire is for November, when this time runs out, to not be the end of CryptoKitties, but to be the start of CryptoKitties. So there is this amazing project that completely changed how we thought about our own thing, and I have to give full props to these guys. And it's a project called Kitty Hats, and you go to their website and you buy assets from their smart contract that they wrote without our knowledge, without our permission, without any special access from us, that lets you buy hats, sunglasses, shoes, and then you buy that token and then you give it to your cat. And I love this. The cat owns the hat. And so if you sell your cat, the hat goes with it. And this completely changed the way I thought about what it means to be a blockchain application. And this idea of like unlimited extensibility. But here's the crazy thing. we had to build CryptoKitties to be secure against people messing with our cats, right? Because we just knew that people might try and mess with our cats. So what that means is that kitty hats can't mess with our cats. So all kitty hats can do is create value for us and our users and themselves. They can't take value away. They can't screw anything up. Now, any other game, when you had some sort of mod system or extension to it, you could always screw the game up. But because of the nature of blockchain and because of the nature of that trusted computing environment, people can build stuff on top. We can build stuff on top that's an extension to CryptoKitties that doesn't modify CryptoKitties in any way, is completely opt-in for every user, and so it can never remove value from users. It can only create it. And so we're working with kitty hats, we're working with kitty racing, we're talking to a bunch of teams who are doing kitty battles, which I don't love. I love the idea of kitties as being these sort of like friendly, happy things and not like battling to the death, but who knows. But lots of people apparently want their cats to fight. And so we want to just keep creating more and more experiences like that. So we want to create more experiences, but we really want to encourage there to be an entire marketplace of experiences like that. That was only one part of the answer. Isn't that amazing? The second thing that we're doing is we're trying to solve the problem of onboarding, because what we're seeing is that users hate downloading MetaMask and they hate going and doing KYC just to buy a freaking cat. Like, there needs to be a better solution to that. So we're trying to look at better ways to solve that problem. And then the third thing we're doing is just other experiences, right? Like, we're not cat people necessarily. We think that there are other games that can leverage the properties, the unique and interesting properties of the blockchain that don't necessarily have anything to do with breeding cats. Now you can go.
So I have a few questions. So going back to the ownership of the artwork, okay, so you're saying that something in your pipeline is to give the owner of the smart contract permission to use the art in a T-shirt. So what if I own that ERC token or kitty, and I print out a T-shirt and then I sell the kitty to somebody else? Okay. How does that work with my right to use that artwork?
I don't know exactly the answer to that, because we're still working with a lawyer on where to draw those lines. And so I can't announce 100% for sure. That's the one that's the hardest, right? Like selling a T-shirt to the person who owns the cat, duh, obviously they should be able to do that. Having them make their own stuff, yeah, of course. Having them print like 10,000 T-shirts and sell it in Walmart, that's a little bit different, and we're not sure where that line should be drawn. When you think of cats like this guy here, that somebody paid a lot of money for, it would be kind of cool. You can make the argument that it'd be cool if they could sell T-shirts for that, but you can also make the argument that it would be incredibly cool if they knew that there were no T-shirts for that cat. And so it's that's the tough line to draw in, and I don't think we have a final answer yet. All right, I'll let Bruce go here.
I'll just make one comment. So we studied this problem a lot because we set up the Scribe in 2013, 2014. What we found was that the title to that is valuable even more if people can share it on T-shirts and digitally share it and stuff, because the title is always on the blockchain. And so I would actually encourage you to consider that, because if somebody can print 100,000 T-shirts, maybe there's a rev share. I don't know, but getting that image out more makes it more valuable.
Interesting.
You said you approve that people give the cat hats. What if people give the cat AIDS or viruses?
There's nothing we can do. If you wanted to create a kitty disease, you could do that. But guess what? If somebody creates that smart contract that allows for contractable diseases between cats, and cats breed, so I mean, sexually transmitted diseases are, I guess, possible. But if users thought that was fun and interesting, then they could opt into that information. And if they didn't, they could just ignore it, right? Like, if you just never knew that smart contract existed, or if you knew that smart contract existed and you didn't want to participate in that, then you would just ignore it. So we actually worried about that a little bit, this idea of like, well, what if kitty hats, has like a pile of poo next to the cat or something like that, something that we might not like. And you can think of worse examples too. But at the end of the day, like, if you want to make your cat less appealing to sell to other people, then I guess fill your boots. But that's your choice as an owner, and so why should we keep you from making that decision? Yeah, Trent.
I want to talk a bit about incentives. So you have this sort of graduated change of how much control you're giving up. And right now, your company owns the copyright. So you actually, this thing is worth $140,000. Legally speaking, you guys own it, right? And those others, I think you said, nearly 100,000 cats or whatever. So I don't know, that's probably 10 or $50 million worth of cats. And so and there's an incentive, at least for your shareholders, to like hang on to that, right? But of course, that's not your goal as a company that's creating decentralized ecosystems and so on. So how are you reconciling this? I mean, it's probably a good thing that your investors aren't hoping that you try to sell out in the next quarter, but instead have this longer term vision. But has this come up as a discussion at all, or do you have a way of framing this of sort of like long term gains in the value versus near term money grabs?
Well, I mean, our investors are Union Square and Andreessen Horowitz, so they do understand the value of the long-term play here, which is, of course, one of the reasons we chose to work with them. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of, like, you could make that argument about, well, I mean, AT&T literally did it with Unix, right, where they realized they had something of value and then suddenly started enforcing their copyright on it, and there's examples of that. In each case, it's almost always worked out badly for the company. So in the same way that an open source license, like once it's out there, I think that once we get this art license sorted and it's out there, then I think that we'll be beholden to it as well. It's interesting, though, because from a copyright standpoint, we own that piece of art, but we don't own that cat. And we can't prevent that person from selling the cat that's associated with that token. And so it is a little bit odd because people think of their cats as the picture, but the blockchain thinks of their cat as like this metadata. And it's an interesting question, like from a legal standpoint, what does that all mean? And so what we want to do is turn that blockchain structure into a license and to the art, and hopefully solve the whole problem neatly. Yeah.
So these guys are represented by non-fungible tokens, and usually we think about it like one person owns one of these cats. But a cat can be owned by a smart contract that has its own token, so a curation market could emerge around each particular cat. Have you seen that happen? Have you seen people speculate on the resale value of these?
So there have been multiple groups that have proposed creating kitty funds where they would go and buy a collection of, like they would raise funds and then go buy a bunch of cats and hold them. I don't know if they actually were planning on issuing shares or if it was more like a hold model where they'd all agree to sell them in 5 years or whatever. I don't think anyone is, actually that's incorrect. There was an initiative, and I don't think it went through in the community to put together a bunch of money to try and buy one of the I think one of the Chinese cat that we released for Chinese New Year. So lots of people are thinking about this. I don't think any of that has actually hit fruition, but I don't know. And that's one of the cool things about blockchain and true ownership. I don't need to know, and we don't need to agree to it. They can do it because it's their property. Yes.
I've heard that upwards of 30% of users are new to cryptocurrencies that come on to CryptoKitties. What kind of challenges have you had onboarding new crypto users?
So it's interesting. So yeah, there's somewhere between 70 and 80% of our users had Ethereum or Ether before they started using us. But interestingly enough, the number of MetaMask installs that happened on our launch week was very close, tracked very, very closely with the number of users. So even people who had Ether weren't using it, right? They were invested in it. Then maybe it was in in some place like Coinbase, or maybe it was in a non-web connected wallet. But certainly most of the people hadn't used MetaMask before. Honestly, most of the people that came to crypto through CryptoKitties, I feel like they were like crypto adjacent or crypto curious. So you can easily imagine how a friend of yours who is sick to death of hearing you talk about crypto all the time, suddenly sees this and is like, wait a minute, that makes sense to me. Like, I understand what it means to own a collectible cat. I understand what it means to play a game, and I can engage in this thing that my crazy friend keeps talking about all the time, but I don't want to buy this like faceless coin. So I think that was a pretty big percentage of people. But when we canvass our community now, they're almost all gamers. They are people who identify as gamers who play like not collecting games, not strategy games like hardcore like League of Legends, Halo, like what's that, PUBG, right? Like they'll play these real hardcore games, and this is one of the games they play. For the most part, our players are very much playing it for the game we've created, and for the joy of collecting and filling out collections. All right, no, it's fine. I just wanted to make sure no one else had anything else.
Question. I really like it. So this is basically a very nice source of data for NFTs. See, this is a crypto economic primitive about collectibles. You guys gathered so much data. You guys analyze it, amazing stuff. Now I'd love to see what's a combination between this and a secondary attention economy attached to that, like you kind of suggested there. How well would that play with the predicted popularity of these collectibles?
I don't know. It's still really early days. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a way to reason about these things?
Can I make a point for this?
Yeah, please.
Remember when we had that conversation in Vancouver about the problem of everyone looking at the same cats because of
Right.
the way that they were ordered? Essentially, that problem relates back to that. Like in theory, you come up with the solutions that you came up with to show people different cats to spread attention in a centralized way based on some decisions you make at your front end. But in the eventual, as the system composes and people build more things, you could imagine a marketplace for cats that had a TCR so that you were seeing things that were more relevant to you in the same manner that was discussed in terms of whether you make a recommendation engine in the sense of Amazon or you make a TCR in the sense of the decentralized world. So actually it composes very quickly when you realize that attention is a big problem for auctions. You can only look at so many things because they're not fungible. They're different. You have to look at it to decide you want it. You have to want it to breed with it or to buy it. So how your attention is funneled is really important. And so actually I think that that's a really interesting point of composition for your ecosystem because managing attention ultimately determines whose cats get bred and thus which genes persist and thus a lot of other things.
Actually, I wouldn't use a TCR for that. I think a duration market.
Yeah, in the general sense, I'm just saying that like managing attention is important. So, so as opposed to not speaking to the tool, but to the use case itself.
With arts, it would mostly be provenance of the arts,
Right.
who would basically raise the valuation, but now we basically can very much combine that provenance together with the attention economy model that we're trying to operate. So I think that's a very interesting thing to explore. Well done.
Just thinking out loud, I can think of so many mashups of just the people in this room, like centrifuge, financial supply chain of cats. Relevant, which is like, curation of the cats and stuff, right? Or like foam, like where are the cats located and stuff, right? So anyway, it's fun.
Actually, foam is super interesting to us because we had talked about the idea of having cats that could only be bred in certain physical locations, and that's such an easy thing to fake in a decentralized system that I will definitely have to take a closer look at foam. All right, we're gonna, okay, we'll do both of you, and then I think we should wrap up.
Have you been thinking at all about building your own blockchain? I know that your take or the Ethereum network is the majority of the activity on it. But have you done any thinking about like using ZK snarks on your kitty so that like you know that you're buying a kitty that doesn't have a tail, but you don't know anything else about the kitty?
That's a fascinating use of zero knowledge proofs. I can prove I have a cat with no tail, but I won't tell you anything else. I'm not sure that's the best way to get the best price, to be honest. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure we all think about what we would like to see if we got, if we got to sit in Vitalik's chair for a while. It actually came up earlier when Trent was talking about the crossover possibilities. It makes me really nervous when I look around the community and I see all of the scaling solutions involve some sort of static sharding where this contract is over here and that contract's over there. And if the two of them want to talk, then they have to do some sort of asynchronous protocol where any number of things could happen between the request you're making and the response you get. And so if you imagine if we were selling, if we started selling cats for true USD, which seems like a pretty cool idea, being able to let people buy cats with a stable coin. If true USD were on a different shard than us, then like the complexity of making sure that transaction works properly, and that do they have the money, and then you put the money in escrow on one chain, and then on the other chain you have to, or shard, or plasma side chain, like all of these things. It's just all of this work in order to do a simple, like, well, I just want to do an atomic swap, but there might be more logic involved than just a simple atomic swap, because who knows, maybe TrueUSD or a similar asset will have a whitelist, and so you can't just send it to anyone. Or obviously the cat, you have to be careful that the cat doesn't get sold in the middle. So there's a lot of things about that. So the one thing I would like to see is if there is sharding that is somehow dynamic, so that as a programmer I can make synchronous calls to other smart contracts without having to. Yeah, I can make synchronous calls and not have to deal with the asynchronous problem. Because boy, oh boy, we have enough problems with getting smart contracts right as it is. And I think you had one back there.
Yeah. What other applications of NFTs might emerge in the future?
The one I'm most excited about right now is like badges and social signaling. I met up with, I should probably not name any names, but I've met up with people who run social websites that you've probably heard of, and some of them will have like badging. The idea that those badges should persist across platforms is pretty amazing, right? So imagine if you were, if you were one of the early funders of Dfinity, and so you have this badge, and then on the Dfinity subreddit you get this badge that's cryptographically proven that that's you, and so people Reddit flare, and then that same flare could then be on Twitter, it could be on Facebook, it could be on all these other social networks. And so that's a really interesting to me. Those are cool. Those are cool because one of the harder problems that we needed to think through is, can those be sold, right? Like, if I have a token that says that I went to the very first Nine Inch Nails concert that ever existed, should I be able to sell that to somebody? And what does it mean if I do? At first I was fully on the side of like, no way, right? Like, that's like, you're proving that you were there, and that's what it means. But the idea of encoding who owned it when it was created, and then keeping track of the transfers is I think the right way to do it, and to let it be sold. And so the example in my mind is this idea of, it's not unreasonable to imagine a collector owning Jesse Owens' gold medal, right? This is a historic event. No one thinks they ran in the 1936 Olympics, right? And it has his name right on it. But that's still an interesting collectible. And so, 100 years from now, when Nine Inch Nails is classical music, someone might want to own that token and say, look, I'm such a fan of this, this ancient artwork, that I have this token that was originally earned by Dieter Shirley. And so I think that's how you square that circle. I think we should probably wrap up. I think there's going to be more stuff. So thank you, everyone. Hopefully it was fun.